If you're watching this video, then I presume that you already have an interest in what KTL is. If you have no idea, it's an open source collection of JavaScript utilities designed to streamline your Knack development by adding advanced features that may otherwise be difficult to implement. Its primary purpose is to accelerate the development of complex features and provide additional solutions not currently native in Knack. Now, if you're still with me, hopefully you'll find the next section where I'm chatting with Normand, who's the founder and owner of Cortex Research and Development. I think you'll find this an interesting session. And then hopefully it will open you up to wanting to try and install this open source and very powerful utility. So I met Normand a couple of years ago, and personally I was pretty reluctant to want to get into using KTL. Probably ignorance and lack of understanding. As a no-coder, just seeing the forums and how you set it up all looks a little bit overwhelming. So without further ado, we're going to jump into a fireside chat with Norm. Sit back, relax, and hopefully you'll find this of interest. Hi, Norm. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your weekend to have a chat with us about KTL. It'll be good to start, let people know a little bit about you and Cortex, and then we'll obviously jump into why KTL was born. So yeah, if you can introduce yourself.
Hey, Carl, thanks for having me. My name is Normand, and I'm from Montreal. I'm an electronics technician, but I've done programming most of my life. So this is basically my background. And I am also the founder of Cortex Research and Development and the creator of the KTL.
And you've got quite an illustrious history, I think, haven't you? You've been doing this for, I know you don't look old enough to have been done this for 30 years, but you've been doing it for a long time.
Actually, I started coding in 1981 with a high school buddy on the TRS-80 color computer with 16K of RAM and lots of out-of-memory errors. And it started then, but it never stopped. Actually, I coded all my life. I did a bit of electronic design also, but mostly coding. Yeah.
Wow. And you currently work for a Canadian company, a furniture manufacturer, Moburn. Is that correct? And
yeah, the project started in 2019 for a company called Moburn in Cornwall, Ontario, and they are the world leader manufacturer of vinyl for cars, boats, airplane seats, hospital stretchers. It's for Toyota, Volvo, Disney, big names like this, Bombardier, Polaris. And yeah, so they gave me this contract of converting all their paper forms into electronic forms in the cloud. So that was a big challenge for me. I knew a little about web programming, knew nothing about Knack. So this is where it started.
And they use Knack, so the Knack is their backbone for all the manufacturing. Yeah,
exactly. So the first part of the project was to try to see what would be the best platform out there in the cloud, low code, no code systems. And Knack was clearly the choice. And then one of the reasons, by the way, was the fact that I could add some JavaScript and CSS to customize the application, which was going to be for sure a big part of the project.
Yeah.
And so I started from scratch, 0 lines of code written. So it was a bit overwhelming at first, but then I got the knack of it.
The knack of it, I like it.
And it went very well. But first, what happened is that there was a lot of code that was scouring across the forums here and there, bits and pieces of code. I was copy from project A, B, and C, and then fix B, but not forget to fix A and C also.
Yeah.
But this kept going on for about a year. I was very tired of this, and I realized it was time to create a library at one point. And then I convinced Eric Lemontagne, the president of the company, to make this an open source project available to everyone for free, since it did not contain any proprietary code, all generic stuff there. And he agreed, and this is how the KTL was born. So that was back in 2021.
Oh, okay. So from what I understand, obviously you and I have chatted about this before. Eric, who is the president of Moburn, paid you to create custom code to facilitate a feature for his Knack application, on the understanding that you were then going to make that feature open source, which has grown over time, and there's more and more features. And KTL Knack Toolkit Library, as you call it, which you're the father of KTL. That's how it was born. So that's how I understand it. Is that right?
Exactly. Initially, the intention was for myself. I created this because I needed a way to propagate bug fixes and implement new features across the board in all applications that they use there. It was a personal project. It was sitting on my computer, so I had to merge code a bit manually with scripts, but then I learned how to make this available from a server on the internet and load in real time with the lazy load functions. And this
With
is
lazy
where
load, yeah.
exactly. So that changed everything. Normand is the sponsor at 99%. This project, it's a paid project. I don't do this for free, but I
Right.
give it for free. And the intention is to attract collaborators and also to attract users to Knack platform. If they are shopping for a platform, maybe this will make a difference, knowing that a KTL exists, that
Yes.
it does a lot of things.
Well,
And
well,
so
that
this could be an
probably
incentive.
that covers my next question, which is why are you doing it as open source? Why? Because I think everyone's skeptical that anyone gives something away for free. There is not a subscription for it. But that obviously makes sense now because it's been paid for by Moburn already. And they very kindly said that once that feature's been created, you're repurposing that effectively as open source. And that code base has grown. I know that when I first met you, I think there was like 6,500 lines of code that is in that repository. And it's now up to north of 18,000 lines, I think. I'm an advocate of using KTL now. And although I've only scratched the surface, the reason for this conversation is this is going to be the beginning of me doing some YouTube tutorials on how to use some of the keywords and stuff. But some of the other questions I had for this particular conversation were about what happens if Cortex Research and Development stops supporting KTL or stops developing it. That seemed, for me 2 years ago, that was a concern. What if you retired or switched it off?
Very good question. Actually, I get this question all the time because people want, before they get involved with this learning curve, which is not too steep, but still there's some work to do there and some investment. They want to know about these questions. And the short answer is that it's very unlikely because Morburn uses the KTL intensively in all their applications. They paid for this, and it's 76% of all their code base is the KTL. So this is
Wow.
not about to go away in any way. And also, I prepared a transition. Let's say something happens to me, everything is ready for takeover by another engineer. And people at Morburn, they can handle this. They have all the password and the authority to transfer the ownership for code and merging and pull request. So if I decide to retire, which is the best scenario, eventually, maybe, I'm not in a hurry.
We won't let you retire,
It's gonna be ready. Pardon me?
but we won't let you retire. But there's Charles
Well,
as well, because Charles is a contributor, and also there's and Craig, who lives fairly
great.
locally to me. Craig's very active in KTL as well, isn't he? So it's not just dependent on just on you. So there is
Yeah, those two guys,
resilience.
actually, Amanda also helps a lot with the test,
Yeah, that's
even
Craig's
sometimes
wife,
bits of
isn't it? Yeah.
codes and support on the forum, on the GitHub issues page and
Yeah.
discussions.
Yeah, there is a repository on GitHub, which is the community for KTL, along with all of the documentation and requests and stuff. But yeah, so there is a resilience there, which I now know because having worked with you for a couple of years. But it was a question I had early on: is what happens if you retire? So yeah, that's a good one to answer. My next question, which worried me a couple of years ago, was: does Knack as a company, do they know about KTL, and is it something they support or recommend it? How does that work with Knack?
Of course, they know about it. I talk about it all the time on the forums, and people also talk about it. So I guess they've seen it, of course, because they called me twice. Actually, we had some meetings with some of their people over there with me, and it was very positive. They seem to like it. We had some discussions about maybe eventually do something together. It's not clear right now because I was not ready for this. I had some issues to solve, and Charles helped me a lot to stabilize everything and make things more elegant. And now today, I think I'm ready to go for this. So moving forward, and first step was to let people know that this exists officially. And
Mm.
we're probably going to go to first version 1 because it was still a version 0 point something, which means it's still in development. But it's getting mature now. I think it's ready for
Yeah, it seems
more adoption.
a lot more stable when I first started using it probably a year ago. I think you called me your chief breaker because you would release a feature and then I would not understand how to use it and I would implement it in a way that you hadn't anticipated. I can remember I used search views a lot and some of the keywords didn't work on search views because they worked on grids. And so I was getting a bit frustrated because I'm thinking, am I not doing this correctly? Because it didn't seem complicated. And and you were very patient. Like, oh no, you're my chief breaker. Let's Carl test it, see if he can break it. And
Yeah, there are so many use cases out there. It's almost impossible. I'm an army of one person, so I need more testers. A lot of more testing must be done, and it's easy to break something because all of the
yeah.
interactions between features. So you're the person who has the most talent to test use cases I could not even figure out, let alone all the field types that are existing in Knack, field types,
Yeah.
view types. So it's
It's complex. And I think for me, I get a lot of benefit from KTL. It helps me develop much more robust applications and have features that it just wasn't possible without directly using JavaScript. And as I'm not a coder, I'm limited to what I can write. Even using ChatGPT, I can ask it some questions to adapt code. But being able to use KTL and just use a little keyword to call the code from your repository is really easy.
keywords are the latest addition. If you consider the complete history of the KTL, initially it was just a bunch of functions that were intended to the coder audience, the users. So now I've created this keyword approach, and now anybody can use this as long as you learn a bit about the syntax. It's not a language per se, but just some fancy syntax. But
Yeah.
I think it's pretty intuitive, and once you get the
I
hang of
think
it,
it
it's
is. The
yeah.
the syntax is a little bit like Excel in terms of how you would write a formula in Excel. To be honest, if you've got this far in the video, if the viewer is still watching at this point, they're obviously quite a Knack fan, and they're obviously someone that's looking for the next level of customizations. I'm pretty sure we're talking to people like ourselves, coders, or people that are using Make, or people that are writing formulas. Yeah, it's really not difficult, but you have to get the syntax correct. My next question, and we have talked about this a long time ago, was will it compromise my Knack application? And what I mean by that is if I add the code from the configurator and I paste that into my application, will it suddenly potentially break my Knack app? I know that people were always saying about exposing the API key and stuff like that. So that was a concern for me. How does that work?
Okay, first of all, the API key is never used in KTL. Everything is view based, 100%. So there's no issue about security in that sense. But regarding the conflict between your code and the KTL's code, it's like anything else. It is possible that you have 1,000 lines of existing code and you insert KTL. Even if you do it right, it's possible that two of them will try to access the same GUI element or whatever. But then if you don't have anything, for sure it's not going to conflict, but it's a case by case. You need to. I've seen this before. People say, how come my code doesn't work anymore? It's because the KTL drives this from now on. So maybe you just remove your code and all will be fine, or replace your code with a keyword instead. And they
Yeah.
say, oh, okay, well, that's even better now, because if I want to repeat this everywhere, I just have to copy a keyword and paste it like 10 times. And there you go. Yeah. You don't
Yeah.
have to add the code every time.
I did that with things like row hover, where you hover over the row and it highlights a row, and sticky headers, which was always a challenging thing to implement with sticky headers and getting the Z index correct. You don't have to keep worrying about changing the code. So I
Yeah,
know,
I've some people have told me a few times, geez, my code is getting so small now.
yeah,
I keep deleting stuff and it works better.
yeah, definitely. I suppose the summary of that is that introducing the load the configurator code into your application, into the JavaScript section, it's not putting you at risk any more than the code you've already got. It doesn't expose anything. It's as safe as any other code you've got in there. So that was my question. As a no
the
coder,
fact, Also the fact that it's open source, if you have some doubts, you can hire anybody and you're going to look at this and say, there's nothing to hide there.
yeah, yeah, and that brings us on to the kind of next point, which about if Knack make an update, which they do sometimes on their code base, would that have an impact? Could there be an issue there?
It would. They've done this once since 2019, and they warned us before this happens. So we're prepared to this and we can adapt the code. But even then, if it would happen and would, for example, remove a class that I'm using in the code, not just the KTL, but all the code on the planet will break. They understand these things. They will never do that.
Yeah,
I've seen that they add new classes, but they never remove other
they don't. Yeah, they're like the
existing class
legacy.
or IDs. Yeah,
Yeah,
they want to be backward compatible all the time, which is a good thing. And no, it never happened so far. What happened, it was Chrome that broke something. It was not due to Knack. Chrome changed something in their code that would break the KTL, but
right.
this only affected the kiosk applications. so it's no big deal.
Just to explain that to Moburn, they have standalone kiosk units which are completely locked down. They run on Linux, I
Yeah,
think.
run
Yeah,
Linux, Raspberry Pi
on
devices.
Raspberry
They
Pis and
have
stuff.
60 of those all over the place. Some of them are data entry terminals. Some others are just passive dashboards. They have those used like 55-inch 4K resolution monitor
Yeah.
all over the place, and it looks like a control room at NASA, but it's only to control production. So this runs 24/7. It must be very robust. Otherwise, the whole mill stops and 400 people are not being able to work anymore.
I'm aware of KTL for a couple of years, and it's beginning to really get some traction now, and people are talking about it on the forum. I've seen posts on the forum recently about, oh, how would I do this? And people, including myself, have said, actually, you can do that in KTL. And I remember seeing those posts a year ago thinking, yeah, I just don't understand KTL. So I'm hoping this is the beginning for people that are starting that journey. This will make that transition easier. And I know we talked about this recently. It's difficult because people don't subscribe or sign up, but we think there's probably about 100 or more people that are using KTL, large companies and such like.
It's very hard to say, but because I didn't want to force people to have a password and log in to subscribe to something. I want to leave it completely free. Just copy this and it's gonna work. That's it. That's all.
Yeah, so you're not
And
tracking
because I didn't force that, I don't know my user base, who they are, but I suspect probably 100-person or maybe 100 organizations. Some of them are quite big. I've seen some, like Craig, for example, in his application has 1,500 keywords, which is a lot.
Wow.
Morburn has about 600. So it's some big applications, big organizations, and lots of users.
So, yeah, it's become my go-to thing. So, but it's interesting, as you say, we don't really know how many people are using it, but it's definitely getting more traction. So, really, the only other things I wanted to cover off, and I know I briefly mentioned that we use GitHub to use it as your kind of forum and where all the documentation is and the list of all the keywords. And so I'll put links into that when we're doing the videos so people are able to sign in, and you can subscribe so you get the feed. So when new releases are made and updates are made and bugs are fixed and you can make requests, all that will be in the description of the videos. But the next video that I'll do after this one is really going through how do I install it. And I'll flash up on the screen while we're talking what the configurator looks like. And it looks a little bit overwhelming if you've never seen it before. And there's lots of features on the configurator, but it's all tick boxes. So it's really easy to install. I think that as this little sort of fireside chat, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. I wanted to really get opportunity for people to meet you. I've really enjoyed the time that you and I have spent together over the past year or so. I know that I rebuffed you like 18 months ago because I didn't understand it, but having the opportunity to work with you and work on KTL has been, I don't like using the word game changer, but it has been a game changing thing. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up, Norm?
Just I want to say a big thank you to you, Carl, for doing this video, and to all the users. Thanks for your feedback, testing, all these things. Very appreciated. Every collaborator is welcome, and enjoy, have fun. It's free. It's there. It's yours.
Yeah, well, keep growing the community. And once again, in YouTube world, in YouTube land, if you've got to this point, if you've managed to get this far in the video, then a thumbs up would be really appreciated. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Norm's channel. I'll put the link in the description. He's got a good series of videos here, broad videos about how to use KTL. These videos that I'm going to do will be a deeper dive and get quite granular into specific keywords. So yeah, do follow along. Thanks to Norm taking the time on a Sunday morning to jump on here and have a chat with us. And that's it. Thank you for your time and see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.